Okay, we will call to order the City of Winters Regular Planning Commission meeting for April 23rd. Dago, will you please take the roll call?
Commissioner Adams?
Here.
Otaviano?
Here.
Contreras?
Here.
Riley?
Here.
Schrupp?
Here.
Vice Chair Baker?
Here.
Chairman Meyer?
Since you were going to get up, will you lead us in the pledge of
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will now go to citizens input. This is anything that anyone would like to add that is not on tonight's agenda. I have one item here that relates to the agenda from the Pisanis. And then, so Kate, you had a non-agenda item you wanted to address?
So I'm here tonight to,
David.
oh, I'm sorry, I think I remember. Kate Laddish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21, here in Winters. And I'm here tonight speaking about the general plan and potential development and annexation to be in the north area. I apologize, I sound like I swallowed it. So I'm concerned that the city of Winters is moving toward contemplating annexation of hundreds of acres in the north area related to anticipated development proposal by Bellevue North. And that we're doing this while we're still operating under an outdated general plan. And before having a proposed general plan refresh, and before we figure out what the public input process would be for that, or discussions about phasing of development. Winters' general plan is from 1992. And according to 2017 data from the State Clearinghouse, nearly 300 cities and counties in California listed more recent comprehensive general plan updates than ours, and only 18 jurisdictions listed comprehensive general plan updates older than Winters. And according to that report, again, which was the 2017, City of Winters anticipated doing a comprehensive general plan update in 2018. So based on the background report of the 1992 general plan, the 89 to 92 revision was triggered by concern about, quote, dramatic growth in 1986 to 1988, and again, quote, by submission in 1988 of a specific plan application for 886 acres of land in the north part of Winters. Council decided the north area specific plan and, quote, its potential implications for the city warranted a comprehensive review of the general plan, and council passed a moratorium and began a comprehensive update with substantial public input. I believe there were 18 public meetings listed in the 92 document. The horizon year was set for 2010. In 2009, council passed resolution number 2009-45, which extended the general plan's original horizon year from 2010 to 2018, and it also adopted the 2008 to 2013 housing element update. So although Winters has some newer master plans, that doesn't make up for the deficit of having this much older general plan. The central problem is that the 1992 general plan was written in a very different climate reality than we now face. It doesn't reflect more recent OPR direction on climate and environmental issues, and our understanding of best management practices related to climate and urban development planning, or per California's fourth climate change assessment, that our area's climate will become increasingly harsh and inhospitable and require real forethought in our planning. So I'm here to express my concern that we will lose our opportunity to do this right, that we will lose our opportunity for smart, appropriate, and phased growth in the north area if we accept a specific plan and pursue annexation for a massive development before we have a robust and transparent general plan update. The right growth can play to build on our strengths, but the wrong type or pace of development can weaken Winters' social and cultural identity and coherence. And development that does not reflect climate reality or allow for adaptive management of climate-related best management practices could become a real economic millstone around our necks. So the city manager has said that a refresh of our 1992 general plan will happen, and I really appreciate that you've been doing informational items to the city council about elements of the general plan. And that this potential refresh may start potentially this summer, but it's unclear what exactly the refresh will entail. So I respectfully request that the Planning Commission direct the city manager to produce a written description of the purpose, scope, process, timing, and goals of the intended general plan refresh by the Planning Commission's next meeting, so that the Planning Commission, City Council, the advisory committees, and the public will know the current thinking and also be able to provide input on what the process would be. Although the potential development in the North area and discussions between city staff and development representative Jeff Roberts are the hot topic in town, an update to the Planning Commission from staff is absent from tonight's agenda. The city manager said that he hears the public's request for increased transparency. And in that vein, I request that the Planning Commission indicate to staff that commissioners will receive an update on potential development in the North area and proposals to annex land at the Planning Commission's meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate. Would anyone else like to have input on something other than the agenda items, the two agenda items? Seeing none others. We close the citizens' input and we go to consent items. Any comments on the minutes? We have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. We have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. Staff and commission reports. Anybody with anything to report? Okay. We will now move on to discussion items. The first item being the study session on the discussion involving the proposed vacation rental ordinance, which unfortunately is a study session because while the city turned in the notice to be published so we could act on this, it unfortunately didn't run. And hopefully whatever issues created that to happen will be corrected, and so that we can move forward with this. This will most likely, unfortunately, move whatever the commission and the council comes up with regarding short-term rentals off to the end of summer, which is detrimental to the city of Winters, unfortunately.
So,
Dave Oswald.
yeah, and I'm just gonna,
Yes.
sorry, I need to recuse myself.
And we are losing one commissioner who has to recuse himself from both these issues.
Both items on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
So there wasn't a
I
lot
had the note and I forgot.
that has been done since the last meeting. I've mentioned in the staff report some of the things that we discussed that you came to a resolution on, that I've added to the draft that you have in your packet. I think the consensus was that if you were going to do a vacation rental from your home, if you did it one day or 365 days, you needed to go through this process. One of the things that I mentioned to a couple of you before the meeting started was, I think you agreed that there should be no bedroom use as a determination as to how many people can stay in a hosted facility, which is what we were talking about at the last meeting. And that parking would be the driving force. But then you also put a cap of 10 people as the maximum number of people that could be in a vacation rental. The one question I brought up prior to the meeting was, I would assume that the 10 would be not including the host or the host family. And so I have added into the one draft that you'll see in the final form, hopefully at the next meeting, a qualifier that says that it doesn't include the host. That number doesn't include the host. I added language that essentially to a different part of the code that you hadn't seen, which is the 1712 that talks about the authority of the zoning administrator. And as we've discussed, the zoning administrator can be the very first page of your attachment A. If you look at page 3, at the very bottom, it talks about the zoning administrator having the authority to approve hosted vacation rentals. Again, that was to sort of follow through on your direction, that the hosted ones would be less cumbersome, more easy to theoretically obtain. And so that all got added since the last meeting. We talked about fees, and as we discussed, there is a fee for use permit, which a non-hosted facility would be subjected to, but there is not a fee for hosted. And we will come up with a fee, or not we, but we will ask our consultant to establish a fee for that, so that when this finally gets implemented, there'll be a fee in place for hosted facilities. You asked about insurance. It's funny, I'll give you a brief sidebar. If you wonder how prevalent your information is on the internet, I've sent Airbnb like 5 emails. And in it, every time it's my City of Winters email address and my City of Winters phone number. I have gotten innumerable calls to my cell phone from Airbnb and emails to my home email without ever giving it to them. I never have actually talked to them. I do have a phone number now that's not an 800 number of someone in San Francisco that I do hope to contact. But anyhow, back to the subject of insurance. As you can see in that wording that I took from their agreement, you, the homeowner, you, the host, are responsible to make sure that your insurance policy covers you for using your house in this manner. So that answered, I think, the question about insurance. And then the last thing was calls for service involving the 2 sort of well-known or better-known facilities that we have here in town. And you see there is an email from the police chief on calls for service that we've received involving those 2 facilities. And so I think I've responded to pretty much everything that we've talked about over the course of the numerous hearings, study sessions, as I call them. And it's my hope that we'll have this back in front of you on May 28th. I know we are going to put the notice in the paper an extra week early, just in case for some reason there's a glitch again. We have a way to remedy that before we miss our deadline. With that, I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions, staff?
I do.
Yeah.
Dave, with regard to the no more than 10 persons, if I recall correctly, in our last meeting, we had discussed that when somebody came to the commission to get their approval, the commission can make, would be able to make a decision to allow more than 10. I don't think this language allows for that, and I would recommend that we include something like subject to the commission's approval otherwise.
So that would be involving the non-hosted facilities, because you wouldn't see the hosted ones. So is that your understanding?
Yeah,
We would, through the use permit process, you conceivably could go higher than 10?
That's not my understanding. My understanding was 10 will do.
My understanding was that there was an alternative B&B process for that, and that these were supposed to be vacation rentals movements.
I mean, I did listen to the audio. I don't recall it that way, but I'm not saying it isn't that way if I were to listen to it again.
well, I guess the only thing I could respond to that would be, perhaps I'm incorrect in what I'm recalling, but I am suggesting.
Well, I know you discussed it. It was talked about.
Yeah, and I don't know that
there was a consensus.
Yeah, and maybe that's where there wasn't a consensus on that issue, though I still suggest that that be the case, because otherwise we are restricting ourselves to making a decision now about a potential Airbnb later on that might not provide the issues that we're supposedly trying to resolve. And so I think some sort of flexibility. I think as a general matter, there's no issue with 10. I think, and very rarely do I think that an exception would be made, because the right conditions would have to occur. However, I don't like the idea of having the commission be precluded from making those suggestions. And if the language as written remains, you have to do some really, acrobatic interpretation to be able to
Well, yeah,
allow for
or
access.
apply for a variance, which you can always apply for a variance for something numerical. I defer to the commission.
Yeah, my opinion would be, I think the 10 limit is good, because I think we should go back to the very beginning of the document, which says the intention of the ordinance is to preserve a peaceful, enjoyable residential environment where the Airbnb homes exist. And it's not to maximize the financial opportunity for that. It is to preserve that environment. And that's, I think, where following Napa's lead of putting a cap of 10 on it is a good thing to do.
If I may, the only thing I would say is I don't think that we have been presented with sufficient evidence to suggest that 11 people makes it harmful to the peace and quiet. And again, I don't think this is the issue on which we'll, if it's 10, again, I think it would be very rare in the circumstance where we would make the exception. But I don't understand why not allow for it.
As I said, I defer to the commission. I mean, we can clearly write it that way, so that's not possible, that's doable.
It would only be for non-hosted, and non-hosted is already coming to the planning commission.
Correct.
And
So the
it
thought
would
would
be
be,
simply
you would
adding,
establish,
you would be simply adding a variance for a
Well,
particular
well,
one.
what I would do is I'd just bifurcate it. I'd say for hosted facilities, it would be 10, and then for non-hosted facilities, it would be the commission that would make the determination.
Aren't hosted 2 bedrooms?
No, we took that out. We're taking that out.
Well, it's still in the front. In
Oh,
the,
maybe in the
in
definition.
the definition.
Good catch. I
Okay.
did not fix it there.
Yeah.
So I do need to fix that.
So I thought it was 2 people per bedroom with a maximum of 10, whether it was hosted or not.
Correct, but I think the way the hosted is written and defined, you could only have 2 bedrooms occupied with 2 people. So the hosted would be limited to 4. And what I heard the commission say is, no, don't let the number of bedrooms determine what the number max could be, but rather the parking capability of that site. And again, it would almost go back to Commissioner Contreras. You might have a piece of property that can accommodate 5 off-street cars in addition to the ones needed for the residents. And so they theoretically could go to the max of 10.
The other issue with that was if you are actually saying you're trying to advantage hosted because you believe there's an advantage to having someone on site, then making it more restrictive for hosted is actually counterintuitive to what you're trying to achieve. And that was part of the discussion last time.
Yeah, and I think that was the thought process.
But going
as
with
well.
that, if you were saying non-hosted could go past 10, but hosted couldn't in this scenario that has just been laid out, we would be going back to disadvantaging sort of a preferred alternative as opposed to either treating them equally or making it a simpler process for the hosted in order to get the advantage of having on-site personnel.
Right.
So I think,
Go ahead.
I think typically, what we're dealing with is a residential lot. Typical residential lot, but if you get a piece of property that's very large and parking, and you say parking is gonna limit it, you can just plow a bunch of it up and park 20 cars in there.
Well, so the interesting thing is, of course, the offender that you're most concerned about probably is a hosted facility, or at least that's how it's put on the websites. So they would be capped out at 10, no matter what, because I'd be the one reviewing the permit. Now, I did say because of the nature of that one, I'd probably bump it up to the planning commission and make it a public hearing, but you would still be held to capping it at 10 because you'd be using the hosted criteria, not the non-hosted criteria that theoretically gives you a way to bump that number up to whatever. So they would be sort of caught in between, I guess. They would have the limit of 10, even though they have the capability, at least if you believe all those bedrooms are legally habitable, to go higher than 10. So,
Mayor?
Yes.
I guess from my perspective, I'm quite comfortable with setting 10, knowing that you can ask for a variance, whether it's hosted or non-hosted, for numerical variation. So I'm quite comfortable.
Yeah, and I mean, the theory behind a variance, not that I'm suggesting you'd have to prove it, is that you're having a somewhat unique situation that doesn't exist typically in the rest of the community. And obviously, if you have a piece of property like this one, and you were to be inclined to grant a variance, you'd have some ability to make the findings, because it is somewhat unusual. There aren't a whole lot of those in winters. And so that's an option that exists. And then the other thing we've talked about innumerable times is, you know, this is get the ordinance adopted, not necessarily rush it through, but, you know, over time, see how it's working. You know, how does it work? Where are the, you know, the bumps, the speed bumps, where are the things that we might need to revisit?
But I would, I think, say that to make it more, so if you're gonna stick to the tens of millions, you get a variance in order to make that more transparent for folks applying, to go to the heart of my colleague's question, I think you should spell out that that's available should folks have a unique situation.
And that, again, that would be part of the application process, I guess is how I describe it. Because I'm expecting 98% of these to fall into a fairly normal, you know, situation, and then the 2%, 3% of properties in winters that are large enough to accommodate a much greater number would be the ones that.
I think what we just need to recognize is that these are all in residential zones, and should be, the amount of people staying in these places should somehow approximate a residential use, you know, a family. I mean, you could have a family that had 10 people in it, but don't forget to have a family that has 30 people in it.
Well, not very often, and you know, getting back to what Vice Chair said, you know, they could apply to be an Airbnb, to be a bed and breakfast too. There's nothing, the ordinance allows for that, right across the street, residential zone.
Yeah.
So that's an option that they also have, and there is no cap on a B&B. It's what you establish through the use permit process, so that's a whole nother avenue that they could go if they didn't want to apply for a variance.
So do we have a consensus on this, Mr. Commission?
Chairman, if I want to make 3 points and I'll stop beating this
Okay.
dead horse.
And I want to open it up to public comment as well.
The one thing I wanted to note is that the idea is that the commission would make the ultimate determination. And I'm fairly certain that under no circumstances would we say 30 people, 25 people, 15 people. It would be difficult to make that argument. And I think the proposed change would allow for us to say, it says 10, your house fits 10, we're gonna let only 10 people stay.
Yeah, you wouldn't force yourself into, you know, you have to allow 20.
Exactly.
Still has to
The
meet
conditions
certain.
would have to be right.
Correct.
The other point I wanted to make was, I wanted to ask a question, what would the variance cost?
It's somewhere in the $1,500 range.
It's a planning commission.
It's somewhere in that range. It's similar to a use permit, and not the same because it involves the same public hearing process.
And if I may, and so by allowing it open-ended, you know, ultimately, most of the time we have the same result, being 10 people. But under the circumstances where the conditions fit and the majority of the commissioners felt it appropriate, you know, potentially we could save a citizen of Winters $1,500. And then the third point is, if I can just make the suggestion that when it does come back to us, if we can get an alternative, in other words, I think we should vote on it. And the day of, you know, somebody will make a motion and say, this is what we want, subject to commission approval. If they decide they don't want it, we'll say no. And an alternative, somebody else can propose to accept the language as is. So I'm just going to ask for an alternative
So
what's there as an option.
write yours as an alternative.
as an alternative.
Yeah,
And then the commission will vote on it.
that's fine. That's fine. Again, I have no problem doing that, and I can make it so it works either way.
And I'm sympathetic to the rest of the commissioners' positions. I don't mean to complicate things, but I think the more we work at it, the better it's going to be.
So are we gonna go by consensus, or are we gonna go?
Well, no, it's gonna be consensus. I mean, we can either do a voice vote, or, you know, I can, you know, you start talking and four of you say, I want to put a cap on it. It doesn't matter what the alternative says. The alternative could still be presented to the council.
Point of order, this is a study session, so are you actually looking for us to take?
Not tonight. No, I'm talking about at the next
That
meeting.
was my.
No, I'm talking about at the next
Fine.
meeting. It's all hypothetical. But at the next meeting, given the two options, if you chose to go, I know fairly quickly, without a voice vote, whether you're supportive of it.
John.
What I'd like to suggest is that, staff will bring back, some flexibility in, tonight's not the public hearing.
Can we have public comment on this?
Sure. I guess you can take, it's a study session, so, I mean, obviously people have a comment on it.
Okay.
But I think, that allowing the council, or the commission to view at least some type of flexibility, in the language, and you can just vote it up or down. That's just probably the easiest thing to do. I get that you try to find consensus on various things, but at the end of the day, you gotta vote on it. And
All right.
so we'll get this forward.
Okay. Why don't we open this up to public comment? I know that Jose is here, he hasn't filled out a form, but if you could come up and your name and address and,
My name is Jose Bañuelos. My address is 728 Lupine Way. And I'll say about a year, something like that. My next door neighbor sold his house and got turned into an Airbnb. And I mean, I called the cops a couple times. Probably could have called the cops maybe 7 or 10 times. But, we try not to get too involved with that type of, I don't want to be in the newspaper or anything like that. But anyways, I got 4 kids and it just bothered me a little bit because, it gets out of control sometimes, That it must have been at least 10 times where, it's way past curfew and we're trying to suck it up and just kind of go with it, not cause issues, but I'll end up having to open my window and tell them, can you please keep it down? And they're pretty good about keeping it down after I tell them, but I have to get mad and think about it before I actually do it. And I get it, it's a money issue, meaning as in they bring revenue to the city. But at the same time, when you're raising a family and you're going to school the next day, some people have the mentality that it's a hotel and, they're there to unwind and get loose and get a little loud. And, I get it, again, it's probably not going to get stopped here. But I just, there's also the issue with the owner, I heard something about it, that he had to be within an hour. I don't know how you guys figured it out yet, but somebody living in the Bay Area, of course, if you get them in traffic hour, they're not gonna make it in an hour. They might make it in an hour with no traffic, so maybe a good way to go about that is average it with no traffic and with traffic and whatever the middle is. If you can't meet the middle, then I bring that up because the owner of the Airbnb is from San Francisco. And, I'm not happy with it, but at the same time, I know it's something that's going on and it's gonna keep going on. So if I can put in a word to not have it next door to me, then, again, if they get loud, sometimes there's drugs being smoking stuff and, early in the mornings too, it gets rented a lot out to, people, doing construction or working nearby. And, for example, we had this issue where for 4 days straight, this person at 5 a.m. would go in his backyard and just stomp the mud off of his shoes. Pow, pow, pow. It took four mornings waking up at 5 when we don't need to wake up at 5. Finally tell him to stop and, he stopped again. But just issues like that, then we might want to address and look into before, again, I understand he makes money and it's good for the city, but, we also have families who are trying to look out for each other here, so I just thought I'd bring that up.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the input. The proposed ordinance actually includes a non-hosted person would have a local agent who would be that respond within an hour. So that's what we're going to be looking at, and this will be coming back in a final form soon.
May 28th.
Okay, any other comment on the Airbnb?
Filled out my form.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
I think most of you know me, I'm Sandy Vickery, and I was a little bit surprised when I read in the paper on page 3 regarding all the things that you've done. I'm sorry I haven't been here sooner. And I requested a copy of your ordinance, which I didn't get to on April 12th, which I got this afternoon. So I'm a little behind, so I apologize. So bear with me, because my thoughts are a little bit all over the board. First of all, totally appreciate your frustration. Totally. I've done property management in this town for 30 years. I think I do that fairly successfully. And so I have that knowledge. I feel that when I read through this, having done property management for 30 years, you have like 10 different requirements that we don't require of our rental properties. And I'm wondering if any of you have ever utilized an Airbnb or VRBO or a vacation rental. And were you naughty, Pat? No. I've done that. I wasn't naughty either. I was in San Diego last weekend. There were 4 girls. We were all well behaved, but the people that lived 2 doors down in the apartment were out playing beer pong Friday and Saturday night. But they lived there. And kind of in my experience with life, I have never found that having 19 pages of regulations helps with people's behavior. We have rules, we have laws in this country, and we have jails. Not everybody behaves, as you'll guess sometimes. I have a house on Main Street at 305 Main Street. I stay there very often. It's full of my belongings, has my clothes in every closet. I'm female. And I do Airbnb that property. I lock my bedroom door to the master bedroom, and I lock the basement because I store my wine down in the basement. And I leave. So I am not a hosted Airbnb. I am extremely particular, I think, as well as I can be, about who I have stay there. When you go on the Airbnb website, and I had a request the other day, they usually have a little thing. I have someone coming in June. His son is graduating from UC Davis, and they want to stay there for 3 nights. Last year, I had the mother who made the request. Her child was graduating from UC Davis. Those kinds of people, they're good. They have reviews. Pat has stayed in one. I stayed in one. The owner reviews me when I stay somewhere else, and I get to review the guests. If you're having problems with your guests or the people that stay next to you, I would encourage you to contact that owner, and you should have his phone number, and you should call, and every single time he's had a problem, he should go and write down and say, my neighbor had to complain, my neighbor had to call the police department, my neighbor, or whatever. And if I look and somebody requests to stay at my place, and I've done this, and I've seen some negative comments, then I'm sorry, they're not welcome at my property. My neighbors aren't going to be happy with them either. And when I come back, I ask my neighbors, they all have my phone number. And if there's a problem, they'll let me know. I haven't had one. I had some college students who'd gotten their master's degree last year that were between probably 25 and 30. Some were a little loud. One neighbor thought it was funny because they sat up in their bedroom and watched them and laughed. And someone else said they were a little loud, but it was okay. So now I know most of my people are going to have to be over 30, and that's age discrimination, and that's against the law, but, you know, you can pick and choose. So I would love to have the opportunity to sit down with all of you. I would love to see, since we're not making a decision tonight, and I don't really feel that we have a crunch to do this by May and have it done by the summer season. And I know you may, but that's my opinion. I'd love to sit down with other people that do Airbnb, and I think that we've done it fairly successfully. You have 2 properties that are a problem, it appears to me from reading through this. And we're making all these rules and all these regulations for 2 properties when there's a vast majority where it's been successful. I did notice on Airbnb that you were going to collect the TOT tax. I got my payment this week. There was a tax collected, so I'm hoping that they're sending you a check. Because on my end, they're collecting that TOT tax.
No wonder their stocks are good.
You know? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're collecting it, and I mean that in all sincerity, so, and it's another source of revenue, it's not huge for the city. I think $1,800 for me, for you to come and, you know, that's an awful lot of money for an unhosted person. For somebody who kind of, I think, knows what she's doing, and I think most people do. Gene's been in my house at least 5 times because I always fill the building permit. He has to make sure there's smoke detectors and seal monitor, you know, they have the 6-inch house numbers and all those things you do. I have a big parking lot. I could put 8 cars there. I do not want 8 people there. I rent out 2 bedrooms and then I have a blow-up air mattress. I often have grandma and grandpa, parents, little kids. They're either sleeping on the sofa or probably on the air mattress. I took my family down to San Diego. There were 7 of us. And we stayed, you know, in a place, and everybody behaved, probably because I was. I like to think my kids would behave even if I wasn't. But I just think that there's some fine tuning. I don't think this needs to be as long and cumbersome as it is. I found it difficult to read. I would like it to be in a little plainer English. I mean, I do have a college degree, but it's kind of legalese to me. I just think to make it clear and concise is easier to follow the rules if I know what the rules are. I'm happy to do that, but I think there's a fine line between this hosted, it's not a black and white and a gray thing, the hosted and the non-hosted. And I'm feeling that the $1,800 is an exorbitant amount of money to pay for a non-hosted person. And I would love to help Tony solve this issue. Because it shouldn't happen. I mean, if, in any rental that I manage, if someone has a problem, I always say, let's go to the owner first. Or when someone has a problem with one of my tenants, call me. And I will work with you to get the problem solved, like parking dogs. So, any questions you want to ask from someone who's been a host?
Questions? Anybody else?
Oh, Cindy, you're a reasonable person. You care about, you know, the neighborhood and the people that are renting your facility and everything. Some people are not. They don't seem to care what goes on as long as they're collecting their money.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to control. We're, you know, Winters is growing. We're getting more and more people coming here for the, you know, the wine tasting and beer tasting and whatever goes on in Palms. I can just see that the problems that we have had are not in every case, but I can see them getting worse in the future if we don't do something.
Well, and I'm not saying you should do nothing. I'm saying that we should do something. I agree with that. But I'm not sure that all of this is really the solution. I think it could be a little simpler to start with. We can always add, but
Yes.
The fee we're talking about is a one-time. It's not every year. It's a one-time.
I still, I mean, I still have, I just think $1,800 is a lot for, and I come home, I come back and forth. Murder Barsadi, hers isn't technically hosted because she rents her granny flat, right? She's in the house next door, but how do you handle that? And I know Greg is here, the Abbey House in across the street, you don't have an on-site manager, correct?
It's an Airbnb.
Oh, that's
or
one,
that's a,
It's an
Airbnb.
Abbey House, but it's the same thing. I mean, you don't always have an on-site person to monitor. And I don't think we've had problems across the street, you know?
So if I,
Yes, Lisa.
thank you. This is a study session, we're taking input, but I think if you have comments, probably not the individual planning commissioners that can help move that in terms of simplifying the language, I would suggest actually contacting Dave and see if there's some things there that are common sense streamlining. And have a conversation, they can come back to us.
And I've done this and I've done short-term rental. We had a condo Tahoe we probably did for 30 years. We don't have a lease agreement. It's like when you call and book a room in a hotel, you don't have a lease agreement. You have rules and when,
If you
You know,
could
that
go
was
over that
something
with
you wanted?
Dave,
okay.
who is the one, and he and the
Senior.
staff who have done a lot of work to put this together.
Okay.
pulling a lot of things from different cities who've also gone through an awful lot of this process. And I think that would be good input, would help us as we get to a final form.
And if any of you would like to join us when I meet with Dave, that's great.
Okay,
Some of you are retired.
some of us are, almost.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
can,
Yeah.
I don't know how much work you're gonna put into this, but I would definitely wanna see which of these rules become overly burdensome, because it's, we're up here doing this constant weighing of, at what point is keeping the children up at 2 a.m., is that outweighed by the benefit to the owner? And I can't imagine a circumstance under which it is, but at the same time, we shouldn't be doing things that are gonna be detrimental to, somebody like you who's running it reasonably. And so again, this is an example of doing things incrementally. I think the primary purpose of this is to have a mechanism to enforce it against the people who are acting unreasonably, not to prevent, other people from doing the right thing otherwise. So if you guys do have that conversation, we can get some notes on, this rule, easy to comply with, this one is outrageous, however that discussion goes.
And like I said, this rules and regulations don't always result in good behavior by everybody, unfortunately. But I know we're all trying to make it better.
But at least it results in positive behavior.
It provides an enforcement besides having the Winters Police Department manage the
Yeah.
Airbnbs
Yeah.
in Winters, which is, they're already pretty busy. So we appreciate your input. I would,
Thank you.
following
Like
what
you
Lisa
did.
said, to meet with Dave Doswell, and he'll communicate to us key points.
Well, it gives us some time
And yeah, and we've got a
for
month
the next meeting,
yeah,
to try to,
or two, depending on how things go.
yeah, well, as I said, I'm happy to meet with Sandy and talk about it.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you. Any other public comment on Airbnb?
Can I just point 2 quick points real quick?
Yes,
Just real quick.
Jose,
Um,
if you come up.
One of them is, when he goes from, summer to winter, I noticed that he kind of gives their landscaper a break there. So like, for example, the fall came and all his leaves in the front were in my lawn. So I pretty much picked up all of his leaves. I even sent him a picture. I even told him I broke my rake in the process. But that's just an example of, he's not there, he's not seeing it. He just assumes that his lawn's not growing anymore, so he gives the landscaper a break. Another thing is, they have a cleaning service come in and clean the house. Well, there was a broken bottle in front of the house. The guest don't want to pick it up. I don't know who broke it, but somebody broke it, and it was in the driveway. And if you walk by there, it's been like 2 months, and you can still see broken glass there. Nobody in my neighborhood has their house looking like that. Why? Because, we want to maintain. We have kids that walk up and down that sidewalk. And, I think it's just something that also needs to be addressed is year round, not just when it's time to mow the lawn and time, they need to be there to pick up the leaves. They need to make sure a bottle gets broken, somebody needs to be in charge of picking it up, not the people living next door. And then also, I did have an issue with, several times where too many people stay. I mean, one day early in the morning, I was going to work, I saw 5 full-size trucks get filled with like 25 people in each truck. Got in at 5 in the morning, again, I shouldn't be the one to have to call that person and tell me, what, they're abusing your house, they're violating your rules. Again, if you guys could kind of look into that and figure out a way to kind of, because again, it doesn't look right when 25 people come out of a house. And again, it's just, it would happen in the hotels too, if there was nobody there working them, but again, it's just something I wanted to point out.
Thank you so much. So we will now close the public comment on that. I had one other one or two other ones. It mentions here under J, report this, report to the city, how many nights, report the tax, all of that. Would it be a form, or how would they do that?
Excuse me, I'm not exactly sure how we get the TOT money from people that aren't part of the Airbnb system. We would notify them, and I don't know if Shelley does that and says, hey, you need to provide us this information.
Actually, it's a self-reporting that people have to do.
Okay. And are we gonna, we would need to like have a form or something to.
And right now we have one proprietor which provides TOT.
And,
And they bring the check over and they are wonderful about it.
how,
They announce it.
yeah, if I have an Airbnb, and I'm not on Airbnb, when do I have to pay the tax? Annually, quarterly, daily?
You pay it monthly, don't you?
Pardon? When do you pay TOT monthly?
Oh, it's paid quarterly.
Quarterly.
Quarterly?
That's probably what we're getting from.
Probably ought to be mentioned somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy may have paid it, but we may
Yeah.
not get it until quarters come up.
All right. And then you asked about the enforcement, putting the whole, point in it about the, fine.
Yeah, that's actually more directed to the city attorney,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
put it in there because I sent her the draft and hoping, I didn't get any comments back. I think it's a redundancy, but maybe
Okay.
it's the redundancy that needs to be there.
All right.
I know Cindy and I'll meet, but, as you know, this is sort of a dumbed down version of the NAPA ordinance and
Yes.
considerably dumbed down. I'd say half or maybe a third of what NAPA requires now. Maybe NAPA's reason for theirs being so more legalistic is because they have to be in order to not go over the edge, but that's sort of where we started. Now, I will say Sacramento's is pretty darn simplistic, so there's somewhere in between.
Okay, if I might, this is part of the new economy, right? All these new things that are coming down. And it'll be interesting to see where a lot of these things go because Sandy mentioned granny flats. Well, granny flats and additional housing that you put on to properties. Now, there's a lot of state regulation regarding that, which gives you the ability to come in and take advantage of density bonuses and all these things to add additional units. And the root of all that is affordable housing. The idea, granny flat, the expectation is the granny's gonna live there, right? But, when all of a sudden you think, I guess I can add a granny flat and then I can start renting this thing out through Airbnb and all those things. Expect a clash because there's already a lot of talk about how these things are happening. Because, the expectation is, somebody wants to add a second unit onto it. Well, in some cases, there are big advantages on impact fees that they get. There are advantages on school fees that come into play. As a planning commission, you're forced in many cases to make exceptions to regular zoning and setback regulations. All those things come into play. How the fire department goes through and evaluates various things. So it's more complicated and it's probably going to get more.
It'll get more complicated.
It will get more complicated because I know that there are a number of people in town that are looking to drop some second units onto their properties, and that would be an issue. My neighborhood, wonderful granny flats over there that would be perfect for this. But so, anyway, expect
One of the concerns of short-term vacation rentals, and we are probably not faced with that issue as winters, but the Tahoe being the poster child for it, it destroys the housing stock. People have nowhere to live, and that's now we're not quite Tahoe yet, so we don't have that issue. But
It destroys the neighborhood.
yeah. Okay, and with that, thank you very much, Dave. We'll move on to the next item. The Abbey Street one-way proposal.
So I put on the dais in front of you minutes from one of the meetings that took place involving the downtown hotel. And at that meeting, then Planning Commissioner Biasi talked about possibility of diagonal parking being put on a portion of Abbey Street, the portion that fronts the new hotel. And at the time, we also talked about that there was a traffic, downtown traffic plan, master plan that was in the works and that would ultimately look at ways to improve parking in the downtown. And this essentially would be kind of going in that direction. It would have a net increase of 8 parking spaces if it were to become one way with diagonal parking on the hotel side of Abbey Street. The parallel parking spaces would remain on the residential side, or the non-hotel side, I guess, of Abbey Street, which would be the north side. And that's really the essence of what this is. Because it's a street, the council has to be the ultimate authority as to changing it from two-way to one-way and reconfiguring the parking. But I wanted you to, well, we wanted you to be aware of it, number one, because it was talked about in the past, and take a position on it before this goes on to the council.
Questions from the commission?
Well, I have actually one question. So in the conditions component,
Right.
it did say that there would be a cross-sectional piece by the city engineer, and I wasn't quite sure your attachment A.
It isn't. And I'm not exactly sure what, when I see the cross-section part, it sort of just didn't seem to me a way that you would actually do a cut through for the street. I don't see what the advantage of that would be, but we would have a better looking drawing, for lack of a better way of saying it, before it goes to the council. Yeah, it was somewhat of a hybrid between a engineering firm that did the diagonal stuff along and then the city sort of filling in the void on the north side of the street. So it would look a little more official than this.
So my assumption is, of course, that advantages emergency vehicles getting through while still having the angled parking. And do you think that once you actually are doing a more formal engineering drawing, that you would actually have an appreciable difference in ultimate parking spaces?
I don't think so. I know we've talked about that the hotel might take a couple of the spaces adjacent to their entry, and that would become their ADA space. And so you have a net loss, so that's why I said there would be a gain of 9. I figured that would be more like 8. And although this was done up against the building by somebody that was doing it to scale, it would be interesting to see if the whole thing were laid out slightly different. I know when I went out and measured it today, it's 41 and a half feet curb to curb. It may have been an assumption that it was 40 feet, which in most instances, that's what a right-of-way would be paved at, but it's actually slightly more than that. So to answer your question, we'll have something more consistent with what's on the ground and drawn to scale.
I think tonight, basically what we're trying to get is just get some input from the planning commission on this, understand that the street is going to be redone. If you look out there, there's, as the hotel said, there's a new sidewalk that's going to go in. It'll list all this from the length standpoint. If you take the south side of that street and go from where the anticipated bulb out of the corner will be all the way down. That's how they got the numbers on these things as far as the parking spaces. As it goes in front of the north side of the street, there's really no change for them except for the fact that it'll be one way. If you look in front of Biasi's, Kazani's, in front of Napa and all that, it's one giant apron. There's just going to be no change for how that goes. In front of the Ganellas' old house and going in front of the Anderson's properties, no change as far as those go. The advantages are for the hotel that One of the spaces directly adjacent to the entrance will be an accessible space. So there'll be a benefit. Plus, they also have the ability, some of these spaces, if you recall the overall parking plan that we had, 3 of the spaces in front of the hotel are going to be like 30-minute, mostly like loading zone type of spaces. So the ability for guests to arrive, drop luggage or whatever, go and check in, and then park after that. Really, the genesis of the proposal is a couple things. First is it's something that we've had out there since the first conception of the hotel. It adds parking. It adds some convenience for the arrival for people coming to the hotel, especially if we have the limited term parking spaces that are there so that the people are able to arrive. Oh, there's a parking space for me to check in. I go in, I do my business that way. And then finally, just from a circulation standpoint, probably the majority of traffic that comes off of Railroad is going westbound. I think probably the most eastbound traffic are probably people in the morning that are sneaking out. There are other avenues for that, but from a circulation standpoint, the idea of having a one-way with the diagonal parking and everything, one of the biggest benefits, obviously, there's going to be lighting off of the hotel as far as from a security standpoint. So a lot of benefits. Tonight, we're hoping that the commission, obviously, probably some people that are talking about it, get some input in this idea, and we'll see the move if we want to move it.
Questions from commissioners?
Just one question, John. Were you saying that the flow of traffic is going to get better, or that's not going to be detrimental to the flow of traffic?
It will not be. No, it's just from the staff's standpoint. We get to watch this a lot because we're right here. But it probably is not going to be a big detriment to the traffic on this thing. Quite honestly, anybody now, our downtown's getting busier. It just is. And if you get to that intersection of Abbey, trying to go, especially if you're trying to turn and go north, there's a lot of cars coming as they are leaving the downtown area. Sometimes there can be a backup. Trust me, I go that way. And just finding another avenue. But in this case, we think as people will be coming to the hotel, the sense of arrival into downtown Winters, they'll come to Abbey Street, they'll make a left or a right-hand turn.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, yes, Dan.
The Yola bus that stops right here, which way does it go afterwards? Does it continue down Abbey or does it go left?
Makes a right-hand turn.
Makes a right-hand turn. And according to this drawing I have here, it says the roadway is going to be 22.9 feet from the end of the diagonal parking over to the adjacent sidewalk, but the parallel parking spots are 8 feet wide. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's off slightly, I think. I think it's about a foot to the negative of what the reality would be.
So it'd be about 21 feet from the end of the parking to.
Yeah, as I
And then-
said, the assumption was I think it was 40 feet paved. It's actually almost 41 and a half.
Okay, and then so the actual roadway would be the 21 minus the 8 feet for the parallel parking.
Right. You'd
My
have
question-
15 foot between the parallel and the diagonal parking. You'd have a 15-foot area that was theoretically cleared.
Okay. My next question after that is, do we know how wide UC Davis Fire Truck 34 is with its ladder capabilities to get up onto that roof? And is that going to be wide enough?
I have no idea.
Typically, trucks are standard 8 feet.
But then those ones have the big pedestals that come out to the sides about the supports.
I would guess if you have a full Stoker
Yeah.
fire truck, it's wider than 20 feet when they stick those things out.
So that is my main concern with that narrow of a roadway now. That's all.
Is this something that, fire comments on
Yep, they will.
before it goes to the city council? Okay.
How about BDSPD weighed in on the chief's stuff?
Chief Sheriff, he wants to go and speak I can tell you that it was, as they were out scouting various things. The chief and Eric were the ones who came up.
Do we want to hold other questions to do, obviously, we have a lot of people on public comment. So at 7:31, we will open it up to public comment. The first one, Larry and Teresa Pisani.
Hi, I'm Larry Pisani. I'm the owner of Pisani's Auto Parts at 5 Abbey Street. My wife, Teresa Pisani. We've been at the store since 1987, and we've been, I'm the second generation owner of the store. The property is located, we have 5 Abbey Street and 7 Abbey Street, which is the barber shop, and it's located directly in front of the hotel. I'm here to tell you that I'm very opposed to making the Abbey Street one way, and the reasons that I'm going to give you is coming forth. Number one reason is limited access. We run an auto parts store, and the type of clientele we get range from autos, trucks, RVs, marine trailers, semi trucks, trucks with trailers, all sorts of vehicles and agricultural equipment that comes through my location. And what that does, by putting in a one-way street, will limit access to those type of vehicles because they don't have a place to park and to shop at the store when they need a vital part to their equipment. The second reason I'm opposed to this is that the location that we have an old style parking lot where the in and out is maneuvered into the street. And this is going to cause major problems with confusion, people coming out of the parking lot, backing into a one-way street. I'm very concerned of that. The third, why I'm opposed to this is that I get deliveries, and being no alley access, or all my deliveries come in from the front. So we get semi-trailers coming down the street with where we unload with forklift, and we do that out in the street. We do that during the day when the trucks come, and then at night I get a nightly delivery that Napa provides with a 40-foot trailer that has to maneuver at night to unload. The fourth reason is there's going to be a choke point where the front entrance of the hotel and the parking lot and my parking lot's going to be. And that choke point is going to cause a lot of problems because the city's decided to give sell land in front of the city's land, in front of the parking lot, or in front of the hotel, and moving the entrance of the hotel right in front of my business, and having access of people that come in the hotel, the first thing they're gonna say, oh, we're gonna stop in front of the hotel. And then they get out and the car and everything's gonna be stopped right in front of the choke point of a one-way street. So I got, those are my concerns. Not only that, I'm concerned about the congestions and not allowing traffic to go through. Do you have any?
I just want to say, when we have semis there making deliveries, right now it already blocks part of the street for cars to get around it. But if it's a one-way street and we have the hotel coming out more into the street than it is now, we're going to totally block off the street and nobody's going to be able to get around when we're receiving deliveries. So that's something to consider. I mean, the traffic will be stopped there.
Yes.
When do you normally, I know you get a delivery at night, you say, when do you normally get them during the day? Anytime?
Throughout the day.
The truck deliveries, we buy most of our stuff that requires truck delivery, and there's no telling what time they'll come. Usually they come to Winters on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we might receive, we received 6 pallets yesterday, parts.
And it's in a 40-footer normally?
Sometimes they'll have a bobtail on those trucks, they'll be 20 foot. But once again, my customers will have no access because where are they gonna park? You know, I had a customer that came in today, with a truck and trailer right in front of the hotel.
You lost
Sorry.
I do want to see that.
I did, yeah. Right there, you know, he's parking right in front, they come in and they grab what he needs and they leave. And this is not abnormal, this is common for
When I
my
go
type of
there,
business.
I have a trailer all the time too. When I go get stuff.
Yeah.
And what do? You pull in like that, just?
Well, my trailer's short enough, I'm able to pull all the way up to the store and the trailer's out off the road.
Yeah, and it's gonna end up backing right into the front entrance of the hotel. It was my understanding that the entrance was in that location.
And also, I have a small car, and even now where it's been stopped for the construction, when I back out of the parking lot just to get out, it's hard for my little car just to get out because the space is narrower than it used to be.
And that would be about where the cars are gonna be pointed out if they're parallel parked.
I think correct me if I'm wrong, but there's markings on the street out there where the sidewalk comes along in front of the hotel and then there's a bulb out right in front of the entrance. And is that going to be sidewalk or where cars are going to be pulled up so they can run in and register and unload their luggage? Because that's directly right in front of our parking lot where people are going to be trying to back out.
Where is it on the map?
I think it's this spot right here that they're
I
talking
don't know if you have this map, so are you talking about here? You guys are here, so you're talking about right here. This is you guys here.
Yes.
So you're talking about here.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so they're here. Never good with maps.
Other questions? What do, if I got an RV and I'm pulling up, I guess I just do what that big rig did. Just kind of park it and run in and get what I need and
Yeah,
run back out.
I get all sorts of people. Before the hotel, there was access across the street, not a problem. They would park across the street, they would park down the street, but now they've got to park, I don't know where they're gonna park. And we're getting 8 spots. I don't think it's worth the 8 spots. for the problem in hand here.
Okay. Questions? Comments? Thank you very much. Others we have, is James Douglas here? No. We have an email from James Douglas regarding this issue, which all the commissioners received, correct? Yeah. And opposed to it for a variety of reasons and recommending putting it off for 12 months, see how it goes with the hotel and act at that time. And all the commissioners received that email from James Douglas.
And I think one of the things he mentioned on the email that he was concerned about was it's kind of he said that he thought it was a gift, in a way, a gift of public funds, not, he didn't put it that way, but, we're spending public money to benefit a private business, which is a hotel. That's kind of the gist of what he said there, so I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that's what he said.
That's how he sees it, is it's using public funds to benefit a hotel. And this is, as was pointed out by Dave Doswell, this was a plan from the get-go and with the intention of recognizing that we are going to do everything we could to maximize parking downtown with the space that we have. But those are his comments on that. Do we have others who wish to comment on the street? Let's start with the folks who raised their hands first. If you have a form, you can touch it. Or you can give it directly to me. We're going to shorten the process. Thank you.
Hi,
Your name and your address?
my name is Federica Beatriz. I live at 8680 Wintu Way, just south of town. And I just want to say that I've lived in Winter since 2001. And the only reason why I was able to talk my husband into moving here from San Francisco is because of the auto parts store. Without the auto parts store, he would not have moved here. And so if the auto parts store were to have to leave town or something, I'd have to move too. That's not acceptable. I think that changing, having lived in San Francisco a long time and knowing a lot of one-way streets, changing one little chunk of one street causes a lot of confusion. I can see there are a lot of tourists coming in, they don't know town. It would be hard for them to negotiate it. And I think it's kind of a bad idea. I agree with all the other comments. But what I'm here really telling you is this idea I've had, and maybe you guys already talked about it and thought about it, and it's already out there on the table. But it seems that the Mariani parking lots are not being used at night. Yes? Okay, so I'm from Europe. I grew up in Italy, and we have promenades there. Okay, here's my idea. The section of railroad that goes from Main Street to 128. Is it called 128 there? Is it called Russell there? What's it called there? Grant. Okay. Okay. So the section of railroad.
It's
confusing.
Russell.
Is it
Russell,
31?
then it
Is it
becomes
30?
Grant, then it becomes
Yeah,
128.
exactly.
It's 128, Useland's Grant.
So that section, already the city's done a fantastic job along that parking lot, the gravel parking lot, to make a nice wide sidewalk. Could even have been a little wider. So my idea is, and okay, maybe this is totally out of line and you guys already talked about it with Mariani, but I felt like I've been thinking about it for so many years now, as the parking getting harder and harder. And mostly the parking is hard at night because a lot of people come in for the restaurants, the eateries and drinkeries, right? So if the city could lease those parking lots from Mariani from 5 p.m., their people leave at 5, more or less. They're never used in the evenings. And use those for the people that are coming in for eating. The only thing is that people abhor darkness, right? So you'd have to make this beautiful promenade wide, double wide, that people would want to walk on with trees on either side and flowers and lighting and Christmas lights. And that could go almost all the way to the car wash, maybe even beyond, or get a chunk out of the car wash, and then use those parking lots for evening parking. Now, during the day, people that work there would have a pass, or I don't know, you guys would have to work that out. But it seems that, you're snickering.
I know, I know.
It seems like people who want, and
You're
people
right,
hate,
it gets complicated.
Americans hate to walk, right? Americans want to park right in front. But I think if there's a promenade, people would want to walk it. They would want to park a block or two away, and they'd be really attracted to walking into town in this beautiful, lit, flowery, smelly, good. So that's my idea. And you can also put some murals on the sides of the buildings. There are a lot of artists that would probably give a pretty good deal. We could have fundraisers, whatever. Some winter's themed murals that would make the parking lots better. And you need some lighting. Again, just last summer, I was going for a walk in downtown. I'm Italian, my friend is Italian. We got together, we went to dinner at the Buckhorn, and then we decided we'd walk after dinner because that's what Italians do, right? Well, there's not really a good place to promenade back and forth like Italians do. So we started doing it in downtown, kind of into the residential zone. It's dark. We couldn't see the sidewalk. It's not a very good place to walk. And besides, probably the residents wouldn't want us to be there. But if the main drag had a beautiful walk up and down, not only the Italians, but I know also all the Hispanic people that really like to walk after dinner would take advantage of that. So that's my idea. Questions?
Yeah, man. You have absolutely just described the genesis of our downtown master plan, the parking master plan. We have, you know what? I need your email. I will tell you that there are some people that really thought about this, and you just hit on more things.
Now, if I may add.
I wasn't snickering, I was just, the point, John's point is you hit on things that have been worked on and discussed.
Okay.
And they're in the plan.
Now, I have to say, just because I'm thinking ahead and I see where Winters is going, that I think that Mariani is a good business and should stay in downtown. I think it employs a lot of people, and I think it employs a lot of people that have no cars. So if Mariani were to move out of town, that would be a really bad thing for the people that I advocate for that work there. It employs a lot of the people that I teach English to at the library regularly. So I think Mariani should stay integral to downtown, even though the buildings are a little ugly for the direction Winters is going to, but they could be beautified, and it employs a lot of people that would have a hard time getting to work and that use the downtown and walk the downtown at lunchtime on their break. So just, I want to say that. So if we could get together with Mariani and have the place, dual purpose, I think that would be great. So that's my comment.
I believe John could answer this one, that there have been extensive discussions with Mariani regarding their
Okay,
possibly their
okay.
lots there.
All right.
There, and it does get complicated. Great ideas,
Okay.
thank you so much. Next. We're shortening the process.
Thank you, Casey Stone, I live at 215 Abbey Street. I've been here since 2001, which gets makes me a newbie, but the way Winters goes, but we do rent, I don't own a house, we chat in the house. To backpack on what Mr. Sonny has to say, I'm in the cattle business, and we have ranches in Dixon and Sparto, and I bring equipment home a lot. Because I'm in between two ranches, and 15 feet is going to be pretty tough access. I know that they typically don't park equipment in the residential areas, but just out of convenience, I do all the time. And I know you guys have had a lot of discussions about the parking plan, parking garage, and all that. I'm not going to get into that, but I just feel like this has been putting the cart before the horse as far as building this hotel. It's a great hotel. It's going to be wonderful downtown Winters. But this should have been worked out before the thing was ever issued permits. And the success of the hotel should not impact the quality of life for people that live on the street, whether you have a business or residential. What you're going to do is cause more congestion on Edwards and Baker Street. And Main Street's already congested as heck at night. You can't get through there already. You can't park there. So you're gonna impact the quality of life of people on the other streets trying to get in and out now. It's pretty tough to get out on Granite for you. Kids, to school, I know that. So, just speaking against this, I don't think this loss of quality of life for those of us on the street is warranted by 8 parking spaces. I just think that's a drop in the bucket. It's not gonna solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. 215 Abbey, where,
Corner of Third Abbey. That's right, yeah.
okay. Like questions? Anybody questions, commission, anybody want to ask them? Okay. And we'll go to Kate next. Who's already getting made a part. Yeah.
You got her own seat and everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, she does.
Kate Badish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21, and this one's shorter. So while I appreciate that the city is now considering the creative ways of addressing the lack of parking associated with the downtown hotel, I'm concerned about turning a key block of downtown into a one-way street in order to just gain 8 more parking spaces. It just feels like a fairly extreme measure for what we're getting, that the costs are perhaps unlikely to outweigh the benefits. Some of the specific reasons that I'm concerned about this and oppose this at this time is that I think it would increase confusion and frustration of drivers, both from those who live in town and those who are visiting, and that it could impact traffic flow negatively as this one block of one-way isn't paired with a reciprocal block going the other direction. I want to be clear, I'm not advocating that we turn another block into one-way.
Got it, okay.
And so, but that is the way that traditionally this would be done, so that traffic can flow one way on this street and then flow back on another way. I'm concerned that that this would increase traffic on Newt's Expressway of people who get down to the western end of this and then realize, well, they need to be back on Railroad, and oh, how are they going to get there? And so they take the next opportunity. And Newt's Expressway presents itself right there, and I'm hoping that we're not going to do something that will increase traffic on Newt's Expressway just as we're moving forward with the alley activation plans. And then as covered by people who know much more about this from firsthand experience than I do, that I'm afraid that would negatively impact businesses and residents on this block in question, and impede flow of City Hall related traffic, people trying to head back over to Railroad from City Hall. That with the traffic flow issue, that if people are not going to be able to head east on Abbey, that then your 2 options are Edwards or Main Street. Speaking for myself, I head east on Abbey once a day, and that's in order to get home from a downtown business from the gym. I don't go down Main because it's congested and I'm gonna get hit on my bike. And so I'm concerned about us as shunting the traffic onto Edwards or adding to the congestion on Main Street. And as other commenters expressed, I'm concerned about the impact that this one business is going to have on people, on everybody who lives and works here, and I'm concerned about kind of what the limits would be with this. That I don't want us to get into a tail wagging the dog sort of situation with the one business able to call more shots than perhaps benefits everybody in the community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And anyone else who would like to address Commission regarding this issue? Okay, at 7:54, we'll close the public comment. Questions, comments, commissioners? You've heard a lot. What do you think? Come on in. No guts. You're the bravest one. Go ahead.
also pluses and minuses. I think we've been talking about doing parking there for a while, although I do share the emergency vehicle access issue, because otherwise it's just railroad, and then you've got the backup there. You can't actually fit a large ladder truck in there. And honestly, I would think that question was answered by the time it came before us, so I was a little bit confused about that. I do think the 8 spaces aren't really meant to advantage the hotel per se. As I understand, it's meant to advantage the downtown parking plan, and it was also actually considered 3 years ago in 2016. But as with Kate Ladish's comments, it is very unusual to have one-way street and not have an offset in order to look at traffic circulation. So I would be interested in what the proposed traffic circulation would be and what they thought the impacts would be to that. With regard to business, I understand, I think you have more than one access. The other one is off of the Grant Street, Pisani, so there are, no, is there
There's
one?
only one on the, you're confusing it, there's 2 Pisani.
Oh, the
Gas
difference,
station.
that's right, there's 2. Yeah, got it, sorry. So I'm not quite sure what the conversations have been with the other shop owners on the street. But my biggest concerns are actually fire, and some of those other issues. Recognizing it's been a long-term strategy and is part of the
Yes.
parking plan, so I don't want to go too far off into saying that we haven't been talking about this publicly for a very long time.
It, one of my questions would be that if this wasn't done, if it was left like it is, I think many of the problems that were brought up still exist. Because this street is going to become a much busier street. And what has been created is a challenging situation. I mean, it creates a conflict between the hotel and the Pizzani's Auto Parts, particularly.
You know, it's basically, the idea, people can park in a diagonal parking space a lot better than they park in a parallel parking. And it was just viewed that way. People coming out as they pull out, Pizzani's, no doubt. I mean, everybody's backing out of it's got a huge wide apron, and we see it all the time. I mean, pretty neighbor, at City Hall. But maybe one of the suggestions is just give it a year, see how everything works out, and or even more, and maybe just table the item and from the staff perspective, we're exploring every option we can. Thus far, we've created probably more than 25, almost 30 parking spaces. One of the things the commission saw, the downtown parking master plan, there are a lot of tasks that are involved in there. This has nothing to do with the hotel asking us. This is us seeking ways to try and improve the overall parking situation in downtown. So the one lady who clairvoyantly knows about all of our plans and everything, she's right. Realize that as we analyze all parking in downtown, we never go further than 1 block. When we count all the parking spaces for all of downtown, we never go further than a block from Main and Railroad. People, the goal of the overall downtown master plan is for a pedestrian-oriented way. So even if you go to Abbey and Railroad and you go north, none of that is considered in the parking counts and anything that we do, because she's right. It's dark. And the benefit, even this section of Abbey Street, many of us spent a lot of time counting cars over multiple periods that we would do it. And it's very dark in front of Pizzani's at night, it's just black as you go up the street. It's just, and we would have the busiest nights, and if you wanted a real easy parking space, just go right here. Nobody was parking there because it was dark. But if this idea just doesn't seem right, well, we can just move forward with the current plan. Parallel parking, we saw parking spaces as being beneficial. The one-way thing, we knew it would raise something, but thinking out of the box a little bit on some things never hurts.
Right, it's been a long-term thing, and I don't think it hurts. I'm reminded a little bit of the university, though, that built the university and then used it for a year to see how people moved through the university before putting down their pathways, and I think there's some value to that statement that you've thrown out there.
Yes, I agree with that. I took landscape architecture in college, and that's one of the things that we learned was, try not to put too many things in, see where people walk, and you put a path in, and then they're gonna walk somewhere else because it's shorter. And my concern, and I never thought about this before, is, if you've got people going one way here, then are they gonna be maybe going down the alley, which is Moots Expressway, to get back around? Or are they gonna be going down the, what's the next street, Baker? To make a loop and put more traffic on that street. And then I'm concerned about the Pizzani's because I go over there and I've got my truck and trailer about 30 feet long, and whenever almost every time I go there, I have my trailer. And backing out, I can do it, but if you had a bigger trailer or if you were not a good driver, I could see somebody backing into these cars over here that because they're sticking out considerably. So if you went with regular parallel parking, you would gain, according to my calculations, you'd have a 24-foot right of way between the parking instead of a 15-foot right of way. So I guess it's a decision of the city council, but my recommendation would be to try it for a while.
If the planning commission just wants to table this, it goes nowhere.
This might be the right plan, we don't know, but for the reasons articulated by those who came and spoke and the lack of other information, if I were the council, I would want a little bit more information to contemplate other than what was presented. I know we're trying to provide solutions and stuff, but I don't know to what extent this is incorporated as part of the parking study or other studies, or there's just not enough here to decide on this. And so when and if it does come back or an alternative, we need a little bit more, I think, than what was here.
I think I would be happy to make a motion to table this.
Okay, do we have a second? We have a second. All in favor of tabling this for the time being, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. Thank you very much, everybody, for showing up and participating. As we have said numerous times, we very often hold these meetings in a total vacuum, with nobody here. And we are thrilled to have people attend and give us the input, because that helps us do a better job.
And if I could, I'd like to make a big thanks to John and to staff for the work
Yes.
and bringing it forward, and actually going back and doing the research for 2016 to bring it forward, and also for graciously offering the alternative suggestions.
As always. Thank you. On the agenda, moving on to staff comments. Questions or things for John? Commission staff comments?
I only have one, which is next week, I think it's tomorrow. Tomorrow, looking forward to having a meeting with the food bank, with other Wizard partners to look at ways in which to improve and perhaps expand food distribution. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's great.
One more comment.
And also,
Youth Day is coming up this Saturday.
This Saturday.
Make sure you go to the pancake
Pancake
breakfast.
breakfast.
and Parade and all the stuff down at the park.
one of the many things that makes Winters the incredible place that it is. And with nothing else, 8:04, the meeting's adjourned. Yeah. You need, these ones I took direct, you need them?
Yes.
Okay, you know, I figured that out after the fact.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's got all the.
Sure.